Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I am Senator Victor UMEH. I represent the good people of Anambra Central Senatorial District. My motion is on the illegal confinement of underage offenders and infants in the same prison with adult prisoners. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the Senate notes that Section 1 of the Child's Rights Act provides that in every action concerning a child, whether undertaken by an individual, public or private body, institutions or services, court of law, or administrative or legislative authority, the best interest of the child shall be the primary consideration. The Senate notes that by the provisions of the Prisons Regulations Act, juvenile offenders under 16 years of age and infants are not allowed by law to be confined in the same prisons with adult offenders. Worried that the negative implication of keeping underage children in conventional prisons is that they will mix up with adult inmates who are likely to influence them negatively, using manipulation techniques to espouse and enforce beliefs and practices that create a paranoid view of the outside society. Further worried by the vulnerable state of the underage children and the fact that one of the fatal grounds for radicalization and mental subversion is the prison. Aware that correctional homes and children's homes are established for the purposes of remanding underage offenders and caring for children born within the prison walls respectively, informed by the contents of pages 13 to 15 of the Nation newspaper of Saturday, March 31, 2018, with the caption, "Kids Behind Bars, World of Underage Languishing in Prison," that due to the insensitivity and dereliction of duty, the police prosecutors encourage these underage offenders to inflate their ages during arraignments in courts, promising them that inflating their age will lead to their release. Mr. President, in fact, the publication in the Nation newspaper of 31st March is being circulated in the chamber among the senators. There you will see the gory pictures of the underage children in our prisons. The Senate notes in the report by the same newspaper already mentioned, quoting a top prison official, "We don't prosecute suspects. Ours is to keep them in custody, and it is people that the police bring here that we detain. When we see underage children, we know them by their looks, but we cannot reject them when the police bring them here. The police often force such children to claim to be older than they are so that the magistrate would not reject them. They also give the suspect the impression that it will facilitate their release, but what they are actually doing is to do away with the stress of taking them to correctional homes. Concerned that the majority of these underage children opt to be tried in courts without any legal representation, following the advice of some overzealous prosecutors unaware of the dire consequences. Further informed by the contents of the same Nation newspapers of Saturday, April 7, 2018, that female prisoners put to bed in prisons without adequate provisions and arrangements for the care and development of such children. The Senate recalls that the laws stipulate that any child born within the prison walls should not be allowed to remain inside the prison with the mother after 18 months, meant for the crucial breastfeeding and bonding stage. The Senate is further worried that the repercussions of keeping infants in prisons with mothers are enormous, ranging from making them scapegoats for their mother's offense lack of proper upbringing, health implications, psychological damage to estrangement from the larger society, and so on. Convinced that separating the underage offenders and innocent infants from the regular prisons as prescribed by the law would go a long way in protecting their mental health and development. And further convinced that establishing more juvenile remand and correctional homes and children's homes across the nation will purge the regular prisons of illegal confinement of the underage offenders and infants. Accordingly, the Senate resolves to 1. Urge the Legal Aid Council to step up efforts to ensure that the underage children are not prosecuted without legal representation in courts. 2. Call on the federal government to establish more juvenile remand and correctional homes and creches attached to all female prisons across the nation. 3. The Senate urges federal security agencies that are involved in the arrest and detention of the juvenile to ensure that they are not incarcerated beyond 48 hours. And when conviction is secured, ensure they are separated from the adult inmates. And 4, to mandate Committee on Interior to invite the Control General of Prisons to brief it on the state of prison inmates in Nigeria and to investigate the confinement of underage offenders and infants with adults in our prisons and report back within 4 weeks. Finally, distinguished colleagues, if you read this report, you'll see that most of these children are arrested in the streets under random raids without any proof of any offense committed by them, because they are children, they are just remanded in prison custodies. Some of them stay there up to 6 months without any attention, no help. And if you see the pictures of these infants displayed in the papers I've displayed, you will see that it is very absurd for our children to be subjected to hopelessness due to the carelessness of people who manage these situations. So I urge you to support this motion. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, my distinguished colleagues.